Welcome to Inside the Zone for the final time this season as we put a bow on the 2023 high school football season. Justin Kenny from Optimal Performance Sports joining us, and as our good friend Meatloaf said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yes,
and
that's 2 out of 3.
That's how it fared down for the 2-6-0 at Lucas Oil Stadium. Bishop Luers winning the 2A title Saturday. On Friday night, it was Snider winning the 5A state title, and Adams Central for the 3rd year in a row, the state runner-up again to Indy Lutheran.
Yeah.
Let's start off with 2A.
Yeah.
That's the most recent game, and Bishop Luers at the beginning of the season, they start off the year losing at East Noble, then a tough game in losing against New Haven, and here we are talking about them as the 2A state champs. You just got to tip your hats to how much improved they were throughout the course of the season were the Knights.
Man, I watched them in week 1 at East Noble and just get completely owned off the line of scrimmage on both sides. And East Noble just decided they were going to run the ball down their throat in 4 or 5 yards of play and just completely take Bishop Luers out of the game mentally more than anything. And to go from that to routing North Posey in the state championship game was just phenomenal. And then you put in the middle of that, winning a share of the SAC championship as well. So great job by Bishop Luers. Took those early season struggles, used it as motivation, got better over the course of the season, and now they have a 12th state championship.
You know, North Posey, that game, they controlled it basically from the get-go. Mickey Daring scores a touchdown during the game. They get a field goal. It's 7-3 in the second quarter. But you look at the game statistically, and like their defense had 11 tackles for loss, Bishop Luers did.
Yeah.
What can you say about the defense? Because offense is great for highlights, and we get to talk about them on the highlight zone and show all those plays. But like defensively, this team, that was the key during this postseason run. The past couple of weeks specifically.
Right. It was because the team was able to run the ball, but they weren't putting up gaudy numbers offensively. It was that defense and the defensive front. Damian Jackson was just tremendous from the outset, blocking that punt, getting several tackles for loss. Wes Javins was solid. You know, Daring, Zay, but then you look at the back end, you look at Finn Sachs, I don't think gets enough credit at linebacker. D-Hogue, tremendous. Davion Surrey on the back end as well. Mikhail Woodson. I mean, so many people went into making that defense what it was. Is you look at it, you don't have a premier D1 player on that defense. You just have a lot of hardworking dudes and collectively owned North Posey from the jump and dominated that game.
And one of the questions we talk about them offensively throughout the course of the season is if they become one-dimensional, other teams trying to make them throw the football. But Cohen McKenzie had one of his most efficient games, going 7 for 10 for $126 and 3 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
So the evolution of he got better week in and week out, and at the end of the season, he played his best game on the biggest stage.
He did. I mean, maybe that early throw that was an interception that was a bad throw, bad read, but after that, just threw some beautiful passes for touchdowns. And when it was piling on time in the second half, he was just on point. And for him to have the game that he had, I'm sure he was tremendously happy with that because he's been a guy over the course of the season with if he can limit mistakes, here's what Bishop Luers can do. He did, and he shined in the state title game.
They move up to 3A next season. This was their 12th state title. All of those are in 2A. What do they need to do next season to be ready for the challenge that 3A presents?
Well, I mean, you got to find a way to figure out Chittard if you're going to play with them, although they get a bump. So you're looking at it, and it's a whole new challenge for Bishop Luers. They've never won a state title in 3A. So here they are going to be bumped up there again for at least the next year. So it's returning a lot of pieces, I think, defensively, but you're replacing a big senior class, a notable senior class. But there's a lot of good talent coming in. You look at the CYO ranks with the team that they put together that will feed into Bishop Luers that rolled the city, not just in CYO, but the other middle schools as well. So there's a lot of talent set to go to Bishop Luers. And now they have another challenge getting ready for 3A.
We don't talk enough middle school football.
We don't.
We don't.
Is that what's coming next year?
We're
going to do a middle school inside the zone. But I will say, credit to Bishop Luers. 11 years is a long time in between state championships. People will say another state title for Luers. 11 years is a long time. And then Kyle Lindsay getting his first, it's a big deal. I know he won't make it a big deal and all that, but for his dad to win 9 and him sitting there still hadn't won one, it's a big deal for Kyle to get one.
Let's talk about 5A because you're talking about the Snider Panthers and you look at the final score, and if you didn't watch the game, you say, man, Snider dominated this team. They did once the fourth quarter hit, but it was 13-6 going into the fourth quarter, the final 33-6. Snider brings home the 3rd state championship in program history. They beat Decatur Central. how did you see this game? I know you called it on the radio.
Yeah.
So what was really the key in your mind for this Snider team? Because in the first half, they had a couple plays,
Right.
And it felt like Decatur Central was playing pretty good football, and then all of a sudden, man, the fourth quarter turns and they blow them out.
There's a lot of similarities, I think, between Snider and Luers in how they're made, because they're predominantly a run team. They have a quarterback that Kieran Billingsley was a little bit more of a runner than Cohen McKenzie was, but it was a team that you said, well, as long as it can run the football and doesn't have to throw a lot, you feel pretty good. And then the defense was suffocating, and it was just very good. And you saw that with Snider against Decatur Central, and just being able to handle that game, keeping them out of the end zone the entirety of the game. You felt it was going to come down to a touchdown here or there, just because admittedly, Decatur Central played really good defense as well, but you had the breakout run for 80 yards for Uriah Buchanan that got them on the board. He adds another 95-yard run in the second half, and then the wheels kind of came off for Decatur Central in the fourth. But through 3 quarters, that was absolutely a dogfight.
When you take a look at Snider's defense, they got playmakers on every level of the defense. Will Kelso, a number of guys up front. The linebacking core is really superb. Lucas Rohrbacher kind of leads that group. Landon Fry's a pretty decent athlete. He's going to play baseball at IU.
Yeah.
And then, on the back end, you got Kolabati, you got Brandon Logan, who's a fantastic baseball athlete as well.
Yeah.
I mean, really just playmakers everywhere. There wasn't anything that they couldn't do defensively.
And they're opportunistic defensively.
Yeah.
And what would they finish? Like plus 25 in turnover margins, something crazy. They had like 27 interceptions over the course of the season, just wild. And it was a great combo of a defensive front that could consistently get pressure with guys like Adam Blakey and Will Kelso and Anthony Hernandez, and then feeding into the strengths of that secondary with guys like Lucas Rohrbacher to fill holes at linebacker spot, Landon Fry, just really good players, solid tacklers. And it was just a fundamentally good team. It's boring, but you look at Snider and you're just like, it was a well-coached team. They executed in all 3 facets when it counted over the course of the season, and they won a state championship. So you always kind of want to look at these big-time numbers and great athletes and stuff. And both Luers and Snider have good athletes, but there's just nothing eye-popping about either of them. But when you execute and do what you're supposed to do, and you have enough talent, you can win state titles.
I honestly felt like Uriah Buchanan was underrated throughout the course of the season, especially like statewide.
Right.
You look at his numbers, and people were just like, Snider runs the football, and they got good defense, and this is a typical Snider team.
Right.
But it's like, he's pretty good back. So I'm glad for him that he had a breakout performance, 23 carries, 235 yards, and then a 26-yard touchdown reception to boot. How crucial was it for him to have perhaps his biggest game of the season on the biggest stage?
Well, it was big because of the way Snider's offense was struggling early in that game and not being able to move the football much. And Decatur Central did a great job of taking 95% of what Snider wanted to do away. But when he had an opportunity to break a play with bouncing off one hole and a defender and finding a hole and accelerating for an 80-yard touchdown, Decatur Central felt really good about where they were at before that, even after that. But it was just maximizing the opportunities, and when they're there executing, that's what Snider was able to do. And Uriah Buchanan led the way, and he was like that all season long.
You mentioned it had been a while for Luers. 2015 was the last state championship for Snider, and there's such a powerhouse here in Northeast Indiana. What did this state championship mean to Kurt Tittman? You take a look at Russ Isaacs and Michael Hawley and the guys in the history of Snider football, and now he's the only guy with 2 state championships.
How about that? And congratulations to Coach Tittman and his son, Jack, being named Mental Attitude Award winner. It was a cool scene on Friday night with that at Lucas Oil Stadium. But it means a lot, I think. And another guy that's just like Kyle Lindsay, not going to sing his own praises, but it's a big deal for Kurt and that program as well, to have a guy that, with that storied history, have a guy that's won multiple state championships and done it with a couple of different teams with 2015 and just how good offensively that team was.
Yeah.
And then this one, not as good offensively, but really good defensively. So you're able to do it with a couple different teams. It's very impressive.
That now, New Pal game.
I think somebody just scored in that game, by the way.
Well, that was 64, 61, something like that. So, yeah, that was a much different team and a much different game. Entertaining, nonetheless. Speaking of entertaining, Adam Central has been entertaining for the last few years. But unfortunately, they just run into a buzzsaw in Indianapolis Lutheran. And, I mean, Lutheran, their offense, it looks like a college offense, the way that they throw it and then incorporate the run. But, 35-28, 3 state runner-ups in a row, nothing to hang your hat about. What did in your eyes was the difference in that ball game? Because, again, it was only at the end a one-score ball game.
It was, but after that sequence in the first half where Lutheran outscored Adam Central 21-0 over that 6-minute span, Adam Central was playing catch-up after that, and matched them score for score and scored the final two TDs of the game, but just couldn't get over that hump because they dug themselves such a hole. You score first, and then you blink, and you're down 21-7, and after that, you were just chasing. And the Adam Central defense just could not get enough stops to get the ball back and capitalize to get back into that football game. I know that the final score is indicative of a one-score game. It just never felt that close because Adam Central just couldn't stop Lutheran's offense. And unfortunately, it was like that. I think Adam Central matched up well. It's just when you're playing a Lutheran team, when you're playing a team that good, you cannot have a 6-minute stretch like that. You have to be locked in the entire 48 minutes. They weren't, and it cost them the game.
When you look at the passing game, we've talked about it over the course of this season. They incorporated different elements of the passing game throughout the first 14 weeks of the season to be ready for Indianapolis Lutheran, and that worked to a certain degree. Jack Hamilton was efficient. Trevor Curry, again, I think tight end-wise, he probably had the best stats in the state of Indiana this past season. But what's the big takeaway for this group? Because in years past, Adam Central has had stars that have been seniors, but not as big a class of seniors as they had this year. This is, I don't want to say the end of an era because they're going to be really good again next year. They're going to bump up into a Jamison Roach, I think, is going to be their quarterback. He's going to be a guy we're going to be talking about for a long time. But kind of the end of an era, it felt like, for Adam Central with these guys who played so much high school football. What's the big takeaway? How do you remember them, in years future on what they were able to do in this 3-state runner-up performances? Obviously, they'd like to get a state championship, but still, 3 in a row, making it to state, pretty impressive.
It just coincided with another program's ability to have a stretch of years where they were just slightly better.
Sometimes your timing is not great.
Yeah, right? Sometimes the timing's not the best. And I know people will argue public-private and all that stuff, but I just think that Adam Central, had maybe its best teams over the last 2 or 3 years, and it coincided with another program's best teams that they ever had. So it's unfortunate, but I don't think that takes away what Adam Central has been able to do. It is not easy at any class for any program to reach a state championship game consecutive years, let alone 3 straight years. And Adam Central was able to do that. Unfortunately, they come home with 3 runner-up trophies, but I don't think Adam Central's necessarily going anywhere, particularly in the area. I think the ACAC, they're looking at it and go, finally, this guy's gone, but there's always another crop of talent. And you look at that defense where a lot of underclassmen got some big-time playing time in the state championship game. I don't think AC is going anywhere. It's a different challenge now that you're in 2A. But hey, with Bishop Luers getting bumped, that's one less local team that you have to deal with.
That is true. Let's talk about some of these postseason awards, because I think it depends on if you're voting like they do in professional sports after the regular season or after the postseason. So I think it makes a big difference. Player of the year, in your eyes, who was the top player, the MVP for Northeast Indiana this past season?
It was tough because I don't think he had a standout player. There wasn't somebody that week 3 you looked at and like, okay, he's going to be hard to beat for player of the year. But I got to go Kaden Hurst with Leo. When you talk about impact and what he was able to do in all 3 facets of the game, offensively, defensively, and special teams, every game there was a dynamic play at some point from Kaden Hurst. And the level that Leo was able to get and how deep they were able to go, it's a collective effort. But you looked at Kaden Hurst as being that dude that this team has a playmaker that can change the game at any time, and he proved it time and time again. He's my player of the year, Kaden Hurst.
That was my guy until the 5A state championship
okay.
game. And then I was going to go Uriah Buchanan. I think he ended up, if my numbers are correct, and oftentimes they aren't, he was 2 yards short of 2,000, which is a magical number, and those 2 game-breaking touchdowns, the 80-yarder and then the 95-yarder, completely flipped that game on its head. So I don't know. Again, if you do the voting at the end of the regular season, I would have gone with Kaden Hurst, which is crazy because they also have Brock Schott, who led the state with 19 sacks.
Yes, absolutely.
And is going to be playing major college football somewhere. But yeah, I mean, Tay Johnson gets hurt, so there's a guy that's going to Notre Dame.
Right.
Mylan Graham wasn't healthy the entirety of the season, so there's another guy. But Kaden Hurst kind of filled the void. And you're right, it was like every week there's 1 or 2 plays where he completely changes the game with something that he does.
Yeah, and it's impressive too because Kaden Hurst, the way he never took a play off. He couldn't do that because he's playing offense, defense, special teams. So you saw him a lot of his plays getting away from a tackle or whatever. There was always effort there every single play from Kaden Hurst.
Coach of the Year. Who do you think would deserve that?
It's one of those things where we kind of overlook the obvious time and time again because you take it for granted. It's kind of like the Nick Saban effect or the Bill Belichick effect back in the day when he actually had Tom Brady. But I'm going Kurt Tippmann. I think you look at Snider and you knew it was a good team, but I think throughout the season we were going, well, yeah, Snider's good, but I mean, are they state good? You know, are they that good? And it all came together in that game against Mishawaka and being able to execute late. That's kind of when I looked at it and say, okay, Kurt Tippmann is my guy for this year because the ability to execute in all three facets of the game when it counted in a big moment was key. So I think how he was able to build this team this year, it's very good. I don't think it started off very good. I mean, there was times in the summer when we looked at it, I know that 7-on-7 events aren't the end all, but you were looking at him going, you know, over on field 2, Snider just got beat by such and such. And you're like, who's going to be able to run this offense? You had Kieron Billingsley having to beat out Aaron Vance to even get the starting job. And you're like, oh, and then they win a state championship.
Yeah, I think we had an inkling that they were going to be pretty good after the Warren Central win.
Yeah.
But yeah, they really put it together, and it was an impressive, a full team and a team that certainly didn't beat themselves over the course of the season. I guess I can't argue against Kurt Tippmann.
Yeah.
I will say that. But from and I said this earlier in the show, from what I saw from Luers in week 1 and 2 to them hoisting a state championship at the end of the season, the body of work there from Kyle Lindsay impressed the heck out of me. And like you said, I think it means a lot to his family. I think it means a lot to the Luers community for them to get that state championship and just the overall improvement that you saw. It was funny because going into semi-state, I thought, ooh, they're probably the least likely team from our area to win. And then after they beat LCC definitively, I said, they're probably the most likely to win a state championship the next week. So just what he was able to do and the impressive run in the postseason, I got to give my nod to Kyle Lindsay.
Yeah, don't overlook the fact that when your dad wins 9 and you haven't won any, and people, just kind of behind the murmuring, like, is he ever going to win one?
There's pressure, man.
There is absolute pressure, and he had some years in there. 2-10 his first year. They had a 3-8 season in there. Several years of 500 ball, and you just kind of, the longer it goes, you ever wonder if it's ever going to happen. It's kind of like the Indianapolis 500 when drivers come in and they get so close, and you're like, they got plenty of time in their career, and then you look back like it's been 10, 11 years, and you're going, is it ever going to happen? And Kyle's done it. He's got 1. Still got 8 more to catch Dad, but he's got 1, and that's important.
It'll be reminded over Christmas.
I'm sure it will be.
Way to go. It should be, as it should be. That's father and son. If there's a team of the year, it's hard to pick a team of the year when there are 2 state champions because you would think split it right down the middle. But if there was a team of the year, who would you have to pick?
If we were going outside of the state champions, I'd probably go Leo, just because they're able to get over the hump of winning a sectional. First time in 11 years. Not only that, win a regional, right? The excitement of that. I would go the Leo Lions because of just the energy that was around that program and the excitement and just being able to finally have some postseason success. You have to feel really good about Jason Dorfler, one of the best guys that we deal with in high school football, and just went through an absolute grind at Northrop, and doing it for 8-9 years at Northrop can feel like 25 years anywhere else. And for him to do that and then go to Leo for the opportunity that he had and get over the hump there was a cool thing to see.
When we have a chance to sit back and kind of reflect on this season, and, in the summer start thinking about what's coming forward, what will you remember most about this 2023 football season?
I think it's do not underestimate any team based on what we see in the summer or media day or even heading into the season. Because I think we looked at it and go, well, who's going to be any good other than Adams Central around the area? And we had 4 teams get to semi-state, 3 teams get to state, 2 win state championships that weren't Adams Central. So I think it's a reminder to me to, hey, whatever you see in the summer, wherever transfers happen or whatever is in the end, we got a lot to decide between July and August and November.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming in every week.
Brother.
The big check is in the mail. Definitely check out for the Jelly of the Month Club. I'm sure it's on the way.
It's a gift. It keeps giving the whole year. Can't wait.
Absolutely, Clark. We will have more high school football next season when the 2024, my gosh, it feels like that was like Back to the Future.
We're getting old,
2024. When that season rolls around, but of course we appreciate Justin's time, and that'll do it for the 2023 season here on Inside the Zone.